Hey everybody, today we're going to talk about how to use a data-driven subscription or a DDS to manage email lists for users. Now, a little bit of backstory here, or not really backstory, but anyway, as a DBA, we don't want to be in the business of managing email lists, right? Let me show you what I'm talking about. I've got this report right here, server DBs. Now, this is just a simple report I threw together for the purpose of this thing, right? It's not a real report. So all it does is it connects to the local instance, and eventually one day, this is a VM, and it just pulls back select star from sys databases. Okay, so it's absolutely nothing. But what the business unit wants is this is a report that they want to send out to all of their users, right? So that usually can be a problem at times because maybe it's a fluid list. Maybe people come and go. Maybe they want to combine, one or two different dist lists, right, from Exchange. So, what they want you to do is provide them with something that will email this out to everybody. But you don't want to be in the business of managing their distribution list, right? So we're going to use a data-driven subscription and allow them to manage their own list. We're going to put that back in their hands, okay? So let's first talk about subscriptions in general. If I want to create a subscription, and I'm in 08R2 right now, if I come down here, if I click on this arrow and then go to subscribe, okay, good. We automatically get the first error. So I haven't set anything up for this yet, right? Because I wanted you to see what it takes to set it up. So in order to have a subscription, the first thing you need to do, as it says, is the credentials need to be stored. The credentials for the report need to be stored, okay? So what we have to do is we go to Home, Data Sources, come here to this data source, and you see here how it says Windows Integrated Security. That's fine, but you have to actually store the creds, right? So I always choose credentials stored securely by the remote server. I'm going to put in my username. There we go. And I'm going to say uses Windows credentials when logging in. I'm going to test. Went just fine. Apply. I did hit apply, right? Okay. Now I'm going to go back to Home. I'm going to go back here. Come back here to subscribe. Now I get subscribe, right? What I want to do is I want to email this out to everybody. But you notice how all I have here is Windows File Share under Choose Method of Delivery. I only have Windows File Share. So how do I set it up to email? I also want to show you. Let's say that we just wanted to say Windows File Share, just for right now, right? You get to choose all this stuff. But look, when you say OK, I need all these paths. Okay, never mind. I'll show you that when we go to set up the other thing. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to get email in there, right, so that we can email this stuff out. The reason why email isn't in there is because we don't have an SMTP server set up for the email yet. So you can come here into the RS config manager, right? I guess that would be RSCM, and all you need to do is come down here to the email settings tab and enter in a valid SMTP server. Well, I guess it doesn't have to be valid for it to show up in the list, but if you actually want to send an email, it does. So here's my test one, and I'll go ahead and say, what do I want to call this? There we go. I'll just call it reports at. Tell it apply. Good. Now let's go back here, and I don't know if it'll show up yet. No. Let me refresh this. This is a local VM. I don't know how fast it'll refresh. put that in full mode. There we go. And you can see here now I have email and Windows File Share. Okay? So again, if I come back home, go to Data Driven Demo, if I click on Subscription, Subscribe, and then here I have my delivery method, and email is the first one that shows up, right? But the problem here isn't necessarily that I'm creating a subscription. I mean, because that's easy. The problem is that I can only send it to one person. If I were to enter in a comma delimited or a semicolon delimited list here, it would I wouldn't be able to click OK. It wouldn't do anything. So you can only enter in, you can only subscribe to things for yourself like this. There is one way around that. Of course, you can enter in a dist list, right? So if the group that you're doing this for, a distribution list that they manage, and it's only a single list, then you can put that in here and you'll be just fine, right? But if they want to combine with another dist list, or if they want to send to people, not only to their dist list, but also to a few other scattered people that aren't in the dist list, but they just want to get this one report, then you're going to have to do a data-driven subscription, okay? So the way you get to that, let me go back home, is inside here. Instead of going to subscribe, you go to manage, and then here you can say subscriptions, and then here you got data-driven subscription. So I'm going to go ahead and just drop this guy. There we go. So you say new data-driven subscription, give it a description, which is also the name of it, I suppose. There we go. I always like to start mine off with DDS for data-driven subscription. Method of delivery, we're going to go with email. I like to specify a shared data source. Since this one is going to the same database that the report is going to, I'm just going to use that one. But you can get your list from anywhere, right? So just pick a data source and go for it. I mean, it can, as long as you have that ODBC driver on there and you have the data source set up, there's no reason why you can't go to an Oracle database, or I suppose to a mainframe, or just, you know, whatever you need to do, right? So go to next. Here I'm just going to choose my data source. We're waiting. There we go. Okay, so this is where you're going to enter in the query for your data-driven subscription. This is where the email addresses are going to come from, and I'm going to show you how this works by just creating a base query. I'm going to show you how you could hard code this, right? So I'm going to say select there we go. So you notice I'm not hitting any tables at all here. I'm just doing a select, and that's a valid select statement. If you run that in Management Studio, you'll get exactly a string with these two emails, and I can validate it. See, it's a valid query. So I come here, the to line, you can either make it a static value, or you can get it from the database, and I'm going to choose a field, email adder, right? Because if you notice, that's the line I put in here. Let me go back. Anything I put in here, email adder Sean, anything I put in there is what's going to show up in here. Okay, so it reads those values coming in. Let's go ahead and change it back to email adder. There we go. Okay, so I've got email adder, and I can do CCs and BCs. I can choose my render format, which is really phenomenal. I love this, right? Default is MHTML, but I can put it in any of these formats and send it to them, and send it to everybody in this list, right? You've got options for setting names, whatnot. I'll let you discover all of this all on your own. Next, I think. I'm having trouble with my mouse. Okay, I see the problem here, why it's not hitting next, and I'm glad this happened a little bit. Somehow this value got changed back. I didn't put a value in there, so I need to choose email adder. I must have scrolled up with my finger on the mouse accidentally. So even though down here I was clicking and clicking and clicking and clicking and nothing happened, it was giving me an error message up here. So if you click and nothing happens, if it doesn't even spin up here on the E, then, you know, search the form and make sure that you didn't do something wrong. So okay, I still got email adder. Okay, that should go this time. There we go. Okay, now this just tells me that the report itself has no parameters, so if there are no parameters to assign dynamic values to, okay? So just tell it next, we know that, because all we're using this report for is to control the email list. We don't have to have dynamic parameters for everything, right? Okay, on a schedule, absolutely. So on this schedule, you can choose whatever you like. There you go. That's going to be good enough for us, so we'll say finish. And there we go. Now we have our first DDS, okay? Now, what we're going to do, I want to show you how some of the options that you choose are going to affect you, okay? I'm going to go ahead and click all the way through here again, and I'm going to get back to the schedule. Okay, so let's go ahead and set up a schedule this time. So we're going to say every day. We're going to start it at 08, and we'll say 25. Let's see if we can get there fast enough. And hopefully we'll be able to catch this coming through Profiler, because I want to show you a couple things in Profiler. We're going to go through a few iterations of this. So it's still 8:24, so we just got to wait for 8:25. Now I'm going to, no, I'm not going to pause it because it should be kicking off here really soon. If I got lucky. There it goes. So you can see here that it ran the select, right? It connected and ran the hard-coded select here, and then it ran the report itself with the select star from sys databases. Absolutely perfect. Let's stop this. So when I do that, you can see that both queries come across to the database. Let's come back here. Okay, now let's go ahead and run it from the from a table. So I've got this table set up in here. Let me see here. So I've got this table that I set up, and this is the table I'm going to give them to manage, right? So it's got both the email addresses in it, and I'm going to run my select from that this time. So I'm going to say star from DBO emails, validate it again just to make sure. There we go. The return column is the same, so I don't need to change anything else. Next, let's go ahead and update the subscription. We'll say to 27. And let's go ahead and start our trace again, and let's watch it come across this time. It's going to take just a second here. Okay, it's 8:27, so it should come across here just any second now. Always takes a couple seconds for it to fire up. There we go. Now, I want you to notice something really important here. I ran the query. I'm going to pause this. I ran the query right here. You can see that coming across, and this is going to pull back the list of emails. But I also want you to notice that, look, it runs the entire report for every single email that you pull back from that. So if you pull back 12 individual emails, it's going to run that report 12 times. It's going to actually hit the database 12 times. Really important thing to know, because if you've got a really intensive query that report is running, and you're running against a prod system or even a reporting system, right? You're going to do that 12 times now, and that's just that may be completely unacceptable for a tiny little thing like this. Who cares? You can saw how fast it ran, right? But you know, for those 12, I mean, you could really be doing something bad, and the reason why it does that is because the report could be having parameters. It could have parameters, and you could be pulling back parameter values in that data set. So it's got to run the report with those different parameter values each time. So it makes sense why it's doing it. You just need to realize that in this instance, that's going to work against you. Okay, so the question is now, how do we get something like this? How do we do something like this and have a dynamic email list and still only run the report one time, right? And that's what we're going to do now. Let's go ahead and clear this. Okay, so let me clear it. There we go. So, like I said, they could use a distribution list, and that would solve their problem. But if they add anybody else, then you know, you're going to be running the report many times. So let's go ahead and show you what I did here. So here I've got an SP that I created, and what it does is it runs the query from emails, right? And it gets the email address from emails, and it builds a single string based off of it builds a single string from all of the result sets. And this is a nice little piece of code that Jen talks about in her Forgotten T-SQL session. So I'm not gonna really get into the specifics of how this works. I'm just gonna kind of glaze over it, but I'm gonna show you that it works. So when I run this SP, you see that now I get my delimited list, right? So what you can do is you can give them a table that will allow them to add and delete email addresses at will, and then run this SP from the report and just build a single string like we had the first time, right? We had a single string, and then with a single result set now, then you'll be back to one execution, and I'll show you what that looks like again here just to prove it to you. So let's go back into edit, here. Now, one thing that you gotta make sure you do is you gotta put this exec. If you don't put that exec, you'll get a syntax error. I'm just gonna validate that that's true again. There we go. Email address, it hasn't changed as email adder, right? So there's no reason for me to change this at all. So I'll go back down here and I'll hit next, 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 and we'll say 32 and finish, and then let's go ahead and start this guy there. So we're finished and we started our trace. Let me make sure that we're finished. Yep, we are finished, and we started our trace, and now we're just waiting. Okay, it's 8:32 and we should be seeing results any second now. There we go. And now you can see, let me pause this, that we have our exec SP emails here, and we have the report run one time, even though it's going to send out 2 emails because there's only one item in the result set. So we have succeeded. We've given the users exactly what they want, and we don't have to manage their email list, right? So the way you do this, you either give them an insert statement and a delete statement that they can run if they have the client. Maybe you can give them a PowerShell that'll do it. Maybe you can write them a web page. Maybe you give that functionality to the help desk and let the help desk do it, and all they have to do is call into the help desk and have them make the change. Doesn't really matter. The point is that as DBAs, we're not managing people's distribution lists because we really don't want to be in that business, right? Now, let's talk about one more thing real quick because this is important. One of the things that I like to do is I like to do what I call staging a report. Okay, so if I've got something like this that's going to run every evening, every morning at some specific time, and it's going to be relatively query intensive, right? Maybe it is going to have to run on maybe it is going to have to run several times. Maybe I've got too many emails to be able to do this method, and I don't want to put them in one long string. There are also other benefits, right? If I put these all in one string like this, then everybody in the list is going to see every email that it was sent to. And maybe you want to set this up to do something for external customers, so you don't want them to be able to see each other's emails. So you have to do the first method or the second method where we just queried the table and then ran the report one time for every single time for every single email that was returned. So if you want to do something like that and hide their emails from each other, then you have no choice but to run the query again and again and again against the database, right? Because that's just how it works. So in that instance where you have no choice, then I like to do what I call staging reports. And so let's say that the report kicks off every night at, say, 2 a.m., right? And I know it takes about 3 minutes for the report to run. Well, at about 1:55, I'll kick off a job, or maybe 1:50, right? Because it doesn't have to be up to the second. But at about that time, right before then, I'll kick off a job that runs that data. It runs that report and puts it in another table, in a staging table. And then the report itself just does a select star from that staging table, right? So you can use SIS for this. That's a beautiful solution to something like this. And just start it up in a job, and then as you create your schedules, then you just write the SIS package to run against the database, and either put it in a different table in the production database, or you can put it in a table on the report server so that it's really, really fast, right? The point is, it's not going to take that long to import that data over there, and what you're going to gain from it is immense. If you have to run this a few dozen times or a few hundred times, then only run it once against production, and then stage it somewhere, and then just do a select star from there, and it'll be blazing fast after that. So, because it doesn't have to do any logic, right? It just makes your report that much easier. So, that can be a really good solution to having to do that. But so again, the different ways to do this. I'm just going to run through these options really fast, and we're going to go right here. Okay, so we can write an SP that concatenates all of the emails so that they're all in a single result set. Okay, that's going to give you the benefit of only having to run it once, but it's also going to show everybody's email. Okay, so just know that. But it's a really good way that, especially if you're internal and nobody really cares if anybody sees who's on the list, then this is the preferred method. Okay, you can also get them directly from the tables. No, I said select star because there's only one column in that table, right? So, but you can use as much criteria as you want. So this has the benefit of sending out an individual email to an individual person, so they don't have the luxury of seeing all of the other people that the email is being sent out to. But unfortunately, it also makes you run the query for every single person in the database. So, it's got its pluses and minuses, right? Just like the other one. You can also hard code it like this. So you can concatenate your own strings like this, and this gives you, and this is the exact same thing as running an SP, right? But the difference is this puts managing the email list back in your hands, because now every time they want to do that, you've got to come in here and change the email list, right? And that's what we're trying to avoid. You could put that in their hands as well. I mean, you could make them an admin on this report and let them do it themselves, but it's still not a good idea, because they could come in here and accidentally change something else and hose the entire report, and then you wouldn't necessarily know what they changed. So you've got to, now you're in troubleshooting mode, right? So I think the fewer people that have access to changing these reports, the better, right? So anyway, that's my spiel on data-driven subscriptions and using them to keep from having to manage your customers' distribution lists. There's no reason we have to do that, and this is a beautiful, elegant method for giving somebody what they want and what they need. And it's very fast to set up. There's absolutely no problem with setting this up. Anyway, take care.